Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Arun Mathur. He is an FCPA, a global ethics leader with over 45 years of experience. We'll learn from him about the complex business world professionals are, how often professionals are caught between doing what's right and doing what they have been told. We'll talk about his playbook, navigating these ethical dilemmas, a step-by-step playbook to safeguard your professional reputation, maintain your integrity, and secure your career without compromise. Welcome to the show, Arun.
Thank you so much, Ajay. It's a real pleasure to be here. I look forward to our conversation.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Arun, welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe, a lot of businesses, a lot of professionals across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We will talk about ethics at work, how one can protect their job as well as their integrity. So we'll talk about all this. But before that, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, so that people know who they are listening to.
Oh, sure. So I'm very much a product of India. I grew up in Darjeeling. I was born in Jaipur. I've been in the UK. We live in Canada for the last, like over 50 some years. So I'm a bit of a combination of a Canadian and an Indian. India is very much in my heart. I love the country. I have gone to high school, university, done all my work in Canada. So Canada also is very much in my heart. Over the last about 45 years, I've been observing, number one, I've been observing the role of business in society. I think it's the business owners and the business leaders who are creating prosperity. The government is reallocating resources through taxation, services, whatever. But I think business leaders are actually driving the economy, creating prosperity. So it's very important for business owners to succeed, for us to enjoy any kind of prosperity. The second thing I'm observing is that ethics is very much misunderstood. Like the concept of behaving ethically in business seems to be treated like theory. It seems to be treated like motherhood and apple pie, something your grandmother said, grandfather said, not something taken seriously. I find this kind of interesting because to me, if you're looking at long-term business success, we have to pay attention to ethics, how you treat your stakeholders, your employees, your suppliers, your customers. And what I see is that the media is reporting a lot of scandals, frauds, wrongdoings. Someone listening to the media might assume that everybody is dishonest. It's like a rat race. You have to get ahead. And I think this is totally incorrect. Right, the media is reporting scandals and bad things, and someone who's not aware might say, "Oh, like I have to cut corners, I have to misbehave, I have to get ahead and do whatever it takes." Well, in my experience, working over 45 years, I'm observing that the people who are honest, the people who have integrity, the people who are doing things ethically are the ones who are surviving and prospering, not these other folks who are cutting corners. So I hope that's a good start. Ajay, what do you think?
Absolutely, Arun. I just wanted the audience to understand you better through your words rather than my words. I can only speak in words. You can speak with feelings of the journey, with all the things that you know. In terms of knowledge, of understanding of things, looking at the business landscape, where is the problem? Businesses, we understand that many of these businesses are good people. They don't want to break any law. That's understood.
Yeah.
So where is the problem? When good people, why are they finding it so difficult then to navigate this business? But they want to do business, but somebody wants money. What do they do?
So what I'm observing, part of this is the level of targets or the level of achievement that the leaders are setting. So one example would be recently Wells Fargo Bank in the US their CEO set up performance targets that were so unattainable, so ambitious, that the rank and file lender, so Wells Fargo is a large bank in the US, so their lenders who are issuing credit cards and loans and mortgages and all of that could not achieve their quotas. The pressure was there to keep your job and all that. So rank and file lenders started creating fictitious accounts. So you had a customer that had a loan, they created a fictitious credit card and things like that. And this went on till it became known and people started complaining and so on. So I think to answer your question, one of the causes is the amount of pressure to achieve targets. And sometimes those targets are not achievable. Those targets cannot be met through normal business activity, let's say, right? I think also the other aspect is the belief that ethics doesn't matter, that you should work around the law, you should work around ethical kind of concerns instead of actually dealing with them sincerely, right? That's, I think, the other component where people are ignoring ethics, simply looking at legality, simply looking at technical kind of evaluation.
Absolutely. So, Arun, who has to be blamed here? Is it the employees? Is it the Wells Fargo management? Is it the person who has thought about this great tactics, to put those targets? How should we understand this? Because on the other side, you saw that United Healthcare issue. Nobody agrees with it, but you see where the people will think about things in different ways. I want to understand it. The way people think in businesses in India, how they think what are these people trying to say? It's like, leave it, or, my way or the highway, if I understand.
Yeah. No, very much. I agree with you 100%, Ajay. So I think there's a couple of aspects here. Number one is that the leader set the tone at the top. So the company's board, the company's chair, the CEO, the senior management team, they are setting targets, they are setting strategy. The rest of the team is going to emulate their behavior. So it's very easy to say, we want to follow the law, we have a code of conduct, we want to behave ethically. Very easy to say, much more challenging to do, right? So the behavior of the leaders, I think, is one of the key causes. If the leaders are saying that, we don't care how you get there, but you have to get to this bottom line, right? You're going to have a disaster. Like, for example, in the NASA program many years ago, they had the space shuttle Challenger that went into space. The engineers were highlighting deficiencies, problems, violation from standards, but management was saying, just go ahead, because they had certain pressure. Ended up, the mission was successful, but in the re-entry, the spacecraft fell apart because the tiles could not take the heat, right? So this is like a very sad example of that kind of outcome. I think in the North American culture, in the Western society, I think there's also a systematic problem where we do measurement of performance on an annual basis, quarterly basis. So the pressure is to achieve your quarterly target because that affects the share value, that affects your management compensation. So that's a huge driver to pay attention to short-term results. I think that also creates a lot of problems. So right now, there are researchers and there are people looking at how can you compensate management for performance without looking at financial metrics. So for example, if you're a CFO of a company and your compensation was substantially based on the net income, you may be tempted to use accounting mechanisms, right? Inventory valuation, cutoff, suppressing expenses, monkeying around what we call earnings manipulation, right? You might get into that because you have a direct benefit, right? This is what happened with the US banks in 2008 when they were lending subprime mortgages to people who couldn't return the money because they were earning commissions, right? The bank executives. So this is a very big problem in the system itself, right? The earnings measurement.
Absolutely. So amidst all these things, Arun, where is the ethics part? Means what is ethics on the wrong side or people on the wrong side of ethics? Because as an employee, let's look at the targets. I choose a job, I work there,
Yeah.
and I make my job my identity. And then the job demands more and more and more till the time it goes beyond the boundaries of law if I have to achieve those targets. Then
Right.
who is it to be blamed? If the same CEO says, go
Yeah.
and kill people, will I do that? I
No,
will
no,
not.
no. Never, never.
So why would I go and break the law just because somebody, then it means I am in the wrong company.
Well,
I
exactly.
must leave it.
Exactly.
Help us understand from people have their bills to pay, Arun. I understand the practicality
Oh,
of
for
life.
sure, for
But
sure.
then
For
we
sure.
have got to be responsible for our own
Yeah, yeah.
choices.
I
If I
can.
make friends with a bad person, who is responsible for that? Help
So,
us
so
understand
what I
from
say in my
your
courses
experience.
when I talk to professional accountants, I say to them that before you take a job, you should evaluate the ethics of the employer, like the leaders of the company. What is their culture? What is the corporate culture? What are they there to do? So, it's very easy to create a code of conduct and say, this is our mission. This is what we're doing. We're going to follow the law. We're going to help the community, all the things that go in the code of conduct. But in actual business situations, to pay attention to the code of conduct. So on the positive side, I can share a couple of examples. So for example, Nestle's recently, they fired their CEO because he violated the code of conduct by having an affair with an employee, which is not permitted, right? So the board of directors of that huge global company, they were paying him millions of dollars, terminated the leader's position because of violation of the code of conduct. Same thing happened a few years ago with McDonald's, where the board of directors fired the CEO. Same kind of situation. Right here in Canada, just last year, one of the big banks, their CFO was a female, and she was having an affair with a subordinate where she was promoting the subordinate. They were traveling, and everybody was aware of it. When the board became aware, they investigated, they fired her. So there are very serious consequences. But this goes to your corporate culture. Getting back to your question of the employee, what can the employee do? This is very, very challenging. I was doing a course last summer, and one of the cases we do is a 22-year-old brand new employee being asked to falsify the accounting, and what are their options, right? After we finished this case, one of the people put up their hands and said exactly that happened to him in his first job. So he was only second or third month in his position. He was asked to falsify the accounting. He refused to do it. They fired him. He went on to say it took him 9 months to get another job. So 9 months, he was being interviewed. He tried to explain. All the employers felt, oh, this young person is probably screwing around, didn't do his job. They fired him. He's making up this excuse about ethics. So 9 months, the guy was unemployed. I had another situation about 3 years ago. A lady was a CFO of a large entity, and over 2,200 in Canada. 2,200 is a large number. She was facing a situation where her board was insisting she falsify the accounting. So they had like an earnings cap and things like that. They wanted her to pay the CEO substantially more than what was permitted by law by falsifying the accounting, right? So she came to me and said, what can I do? We went through this sort of evaluation. I also went to some other people. So at the end of all of that, she made the hard decision to leave her position after trying her best to rectify, explaining the consequences of, because when you falsify accounting, it's going to come out. You can never falsify the accounting and keep it hidden. Like that doesn't happen, right? So they, in spite of her explaining, they kept insisting. And then she resigned and gave up a very well-paying job, very good position. She said, no, I don't want to be part of this, right? So this is very, very challenging. I spoke to someone else from at Atlantic Canada. She was, when I met her, she was in her 50s. But she said when she was in her 30s, she was in a sole employer city. So there was only one company. So it was like company town. They asked her to falsify the accounting. She refused to do it. So she tried her best. Eventually, she wrote a letter to the board of directors outlining all of her effort to correct things, to do the right thing. And the last sentence of her letter was, and because the company refused to do it, she said, I am going to resign. So she uprooted her family, left the town, left her job. So it takes a lot of courage. It's not easy. I admit that, right? It's not easy. One of the problems, Ajay, is that when you are in this situation, let's say like that young person, 22 years old, and your employer says, just do this. It's very small, right? It's not material. It's not going to have any effect. This is just something small. If you say yes to that small request, the next request will be bigger and the next request will be bigger still. This is how these things work, right? So sometimes the fraudsters, sometimes the people gaining from that falsification, they get the financial benefit, but then you end up getting the blame, right? You lose your job, you get prosecuted, you violated the company policy. So this is a very real thing. I think it's happening all over the world. And if you find yourself in that kind of culture, you find yourself in that kind of position, you have to really pay attention. Like, you should not be ignoring it. Like, you should be addressing it and gaining that courage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A job is ultimately only a job, Arun. And one has to be perhaps mindful of this, especially in today's time. So let's look at it from an employee's dilemma. Means in terms of, let's look at it, corporate culture versus corporate governance.
Right.
Corporate culture, we also see, we know about it, what we are, which culture we have gotten into. And
Right.
rules for corporate governance are also very clear. Can't we find ourselves in a position where we say these rules are very much in place? How do you expect me to violate them? Even you see, even in companies, they have got this auditors, statutory auditors. Whenever something is wrong, they resign beforehand. Then everybody knows there is a problem somewhere, They are also in terms of want money, but they know now that the time for earning money is over. Let's leave this place. Even for independent directors, we have got this position. Shouldn't employees also be mindful of all these things as well, corporate culture, as well as the rules of corporate governance in whichever country they are, and understand it, and then follow things accordingly, so that they have also, when they are saying no, they are backed by solid knowledge and not by the whims and fancies of whoever their superior is.
Well, exactly. No, and that's exactly it, Ajay. I'm glad you put it like that. That's exactly how I see it. So, we have a governance system, we have policies, we have roles, responsibilities. A corporation or any organization organizes along those governance lines, right? I think the important thing is the attitude with which management runs the company, the directors run the company, the employees do the operations of the company. I think the attitude should be that we are here to do what is right and good. We are here to strengthen the company in the future. Excuse me. And we will not take the shortcuts, right? Because every shortcut you take has a consequence, right? So if you lie, if you deceive, if you rip off someone, it could be your employees, could be your customers, suppliers, there are going to be consequences, right? So I think if management and the staff believe in that, right, that's one of the things. So one thing is to comply to the law. We can say, okay, here's what the law requires. Here's what the company acts require. Here's what the auditors require. All of that is compliance, right? All of that is compliance to say, I must do this, right? With ethics, I think is bigger than compliance, because we are understanding that we're in a process, right? We're in a process of strengthening the company, increasing the profitability, increasing the value. We won't take shortcuts, because if you try to work around the law, you try to work around so just to get back to what ethics is defined as moral principles that govern our behavior. Like, what is our morality? How are we? So that's kind of the definition. My interpretation is, number one, we are aware of the implications of our actions on other people. Like, we're aware of the positive and negative implications. We're concerned about those implications. We don't want to hurt someone while we're pursuing our business objectives, right? We want to be aware, if we're taking some action, is it going to hurt someone else? We're concerned about the greater good. We're taking like a long-term view, right? We're not just trying to win the battle, we're trying to win the war. right? So if we have that ethical kind of orientation, you'll see in business situations, in management meetings, in actual decisions, you may have an opportunity to rip someone off. You may have an opportunity to grab something which comes in your way. One good example is duplicate payments, right? There are companies that pay an invoice twice because their accounting systems are weak, their internal control systems are weak. The question is, what do you do when you receive a duplicate payment, right? Will you take that money, or will you inform them and say, you paid us twice, here's your money back, right? This is like an ethical question. Nothing in the law says you have to return that money, but what is right and good and correct is probably to return that money, because then you will create trust and you will create a bond with that person, right? So I think it's this awareness that taking shortcuts, being technical in our view, ignoring other people's, let's say, the impact on other people, all of this will have consequences. So I can tell you, like, human nature is that we want to work with someone who's honest. We want to work with someone who speaks the truth. We want to work with someone who delivers what they say, whether it's a contract, whether it's a supplier. Even in human interaction, nobody wants to deal with the dishonest person. Even a criminal will not deal with a dishonest person. They demand that you speak to them in the truth, right? This is human nature. This is how life works. So these people who are intentionally behaving dishonestly, and I've met them, I've met a number of them who disagree with my values and disagree with the importance of ethics. They think that everybody is dishonest, and they think that because they're intelligent, because they are smart, they will get ahead in spite of paying attention to ethics, right? But I think this is wrong. Like, somewhere along the line, there's going to be consequences. So it is definitely very, very challenging to live up to your ethics, to have the courage. And but I think ultimately, if you look over time, if we behave in a proper manner, if we live up to our values, not only will people around us respect us, like our children, our spouse, our coworkers, but we ourselves will build self-respect, and we will become, as we get older and as we get wiser, we will look back and say, we led a good life, we didn't hurt anyone. And I think there's something to it, there's something there.
Absolutely. So let's understand things from a leader's perspective point of view. What are the challenges they face? And is it a big challenge that, politics has also entwined itself so much with businesses that on the face of it, it looks like we have to do things legally. But when politics demands its own, share of flesh, then you don't know whether one should go by ethics, one should go by legality. You hardly have any options left. Help us understand from that point of view.
Ajay, this is such an interesting comment. So if you talk about corruption, bribery, kickbacks, let's say wrongdoing, conflict of interest, collusion, all these negative things, and it goes right back to what I was saying a minute ago about this idea that everybody is dishonest. So I was speaking in Calcutta in a conference, and in the Q&A, pretty much the essence of the questions was that in our marketplace, in our jurisdiction, everybody is dishonest. So how can we be honest in this kind of environment, right? So the example I gave them is that I have a cousin in Delhi, and he explained to me how the system works, right? Like, how does the money flow for a contract? And he explained the whole system to me. And I said, okay, I understand. I have another cousin also in Delhi, and he runs a manufacturing company. He came here to Detroit because he supplies in the automotive sector. They manufacture, and there was a customer complaint. So he jumped in a plane, flew across the world to sit across from the customer and understand the complaint and rectify and so on. So I was having dinner with this second cousin, and I said to him, I heard about the corruption in India, how you get licenses and approvals, and it must be very challenging for you. He says to me, we don't pay 1 rupee to any government official. right? So I was completely startled. I said, oh, I understood you had to, right? And I said, how do you conduct your business? He said to me that we will sit in that government office till they give us the license, and we will come every day till they give it to us. So now over time, these government officials understand that this company will not pay, and this company has succeeded, right? It's not like they are struggling, they are doing very well. So I'm just saying, even when people are saying to me our environment is like this, there are those who are going against that flow and still surviving. It's much harder, but that's very possible. This is a reality, right? I can see that even in terms of accounting, even in terms of the work that I do. I look at some of the clients' bookkeeping, I look at some of the clients' accounting policies, and I say these are very aggressive, right? Like, this is not the way you calculate net income, right? We see that kind of thing happening, where there's such a strong desire to show income and to show profit that you're manipulating, you're pushing in that direction. This is very real.
Absolutely, Arun. Let's look at it from another point of view. World is going global. Companies are going global, especially with online and everything. You are an FCPA, expert. You know about all these things. How does a company expand beyond a particular jurisdiction where the dynamics are totally different? And you have to be liable in that place, whereas another place you got to do business.
Oh,
Help us understand from that point of view.
It's very, very challenging. I have spoken with CFOs of companies that are operating across the globe and I've asked them exactly this question, like, how do you cope with different jurisdictions, different corporate cultures? Very, very challenging. I think the first thing to recognize is that there is a difference, right? So you cannot bring Canadian, North American practices, let's say, in other parts of the world. I've even heard of the opposite. I have heard from this is not a CFO. This person is like a CEO of a North American company, which is owned by an Indian company. So one of the conglomerates in India established in US, they hired him as their CEO. He worked with them about 4 or 5 years. And through this whole period, he was sharing with me his struggles and his difficulty, because they were bringing like an Indian mindset to the North American business, right? And he came with a North American business, and there's like a constant, let's say, friction between how things should be done, how they want to do things. So this is very true. I think recognizing that difference is important. There's probably going to be a little bit of give and take. I'll tell you, when it comes to ethics and it comes to legality, both in Canada and the US, there are laws that prohibit payment of bribery to foreign officials. And the penalty is jail for the Canadian CEO and the American CEO, right? So when Canadian companies have mines in Africa, when Canadian companies are going to other countries, they may be in an environment where bribery, corruption, all of that is everyday. Cash payments are like an everyday thing, but that CEO is liable over here. So that law, both for Canada and the US, goes beyond the Canadian soil to even other countries, right? So this is very, very challenging. And we actually do this case study where we say a Canadian company has a mine in Madagascar and you are the CEO. The risk is very high, right? Bribery and corruption. What are you going to do, right? So we look at how to mitigate. We look at what could you do in terms of staff training? What could you do in terms of perhaps controlling from Canada and not dispersing locally? All the different things, and ultimately we finish by saying, if the risk is really high, maybe you get out of that jurisdiction, right? That may be the decision. And I know there have been a number of scandals where officials get caught in paying bribes, and some of these companies actually have gone out of business. Huge companies, right? Some of them have been fined. Here in Canada, they've actually jailed one of the CEOs in this kind of situation. So that's a very, very serious risk as the business is getting global.
Absolutely. Several times we see it is then your country's politicians who will become the facilitators. You pay,
Mhm.
pay for their campaigns. They will help facilitate there, and everything then will be done legally. Your work gets done through that government, and here you paid, the
Yeah, yeah,
funds and everything, the campaign, everything is clean. On top, you
yeah.
have officially paid some campaign money. Is that the way going? That is going to be for that is where I said the business and politics have become so intertwined that you don't
Oh, I
know you should
agree.
play by the book or play by ethics. It's also difficult to separate.
And very true, very true. And it's interesting. There are jurisdictions where the corruption is very open, right? Like you see the corruption, right? And but you're very right. Like you may be trying to behave ethically, but if the leaders and the people who control the levers of power, if they're behaving very openly unethically, that makes it even more challenging, right? Because we're like the small fries, right? Like we're not the big players, but the big players are doing that kind of corruption and so on, right? It's so true.
Absolutely. So, amidst all these things, how do you advise these companies, these leaders on in terms of ethics? Is there a
So,
particular way that they can follow, or is it all as per the new challenges?
so I have simplified something. I call it like the 4Ds, right? So this is like a 4-step framework. If you are in a situation where you're unsure, you're concerned about ethics, you think there might be some negative implications, or you're afraid to talk about it because you might be doing something wrong. So this 4-step approach, the first step is what I say is can you defend your action when someone is questioning your action? Let's say like a newspaper reporter or a family member, someone says, why did you do this? Do you have hesitation in explaining, right? Because if you have hesitation, that means you're doing something wrong. So that's kind of the first step. Can you defend this action with an aggressive newspaper reporter or TV reporter, or even like family saying, okay, why did you do this, right? So if you are not able to defend, that's an indication you may be doing something wrong, you might be hurting someone, and so on. The second step, I call it dig deep. So dig deep means that you want to lay out the facts, like what are the facts in this case, right? So the reason I say that is many times, this is how the human mind works, right? We look at a situation and we make a very quick conclusion. So for example, you could walk into a room and say, I don't want to be here, I don't like it, and I want to leave, right? You can walk into another room and be very, very happy and say, I'm so happy I'm here. You've only been there for a few seconds, right? So sometimes the situation might appear a way to you, but perhaps there are facts you don't know, right? You might be misinterpreting what's going on. So I'm saying, dig deep means like the second step is dig deep. It means lay out all the facts, make sure you understand what's going on, right? What is actually happening? So that second step requires us to investigate, to really become aware, is there something I don't know, right, about the situation? So you're looking at facts, you're looking at timing, you're looking at motivation, you're looking at why are we doing this, right? That type of investigation. Number 3 step is very important, and that is to develop your options on how can you respond. So here, for example, I talk about the first response is just do it, right? So someone says, do this, you just do it. You're not thinking, right? I call that the Nike response, just do it. But it has a lot of consequences, right? So it doesn't mean that's the right thing to do. The second step could be you refuse to do it, and then there's certain ramifications, right? You could lose your job, you could get a negative review, you could be sidelined, and so on. And then I say, go beyond that and come up with at least 5 or 6 other options. How can you respond to this, right? So those are things, depending on the circumstances, you might look at other people in the organization to get their support. You might go to the board of directors. There might be a whistleblower hotline, internal audit. There might be other people that should be informed, and so on. One of the options we put on the table is perhaps talking to the company's lawyer, perhaps talking to the audit firm. But again, these have their own ramifications, right? So if you were to go to your company's audit firm and say, they're asking me to do something which is illegal, they're asking me to falsify the accounting, the audit risk goes up, and the relationship with the auditor becomes strained, right? So all of these options you have to evaluate and look at the plus and minus, right? So at the end of laying out the options is an evaluation of the options. And the fourth thing is to decide which of these options are you going to go with. And that will depend on your comfort level, that will depend on your ability to explain, and that depends on, does it tie into the organization's values and goals and that kind of thing. So that fourth decision, once you make a decision, select an option, then you have to prepare for the consequences of that decision, right? You may have to leave your job, you may have other ramifications, right? So the whole idea is to think through this thing and think long-term, not just the current situation, right? It's very easy to get pressured into something. I have actually two friends who lost their CA designation because they were put in a position of pressure and they succumbed to that pressure. So one was a situation where a company was falsifying their earnings, and my friend who worked with me was the financial person there. He was the controller, and he got talked into this falsification. So this thing went to court, and he was stripped of his CA designation. The second person he was a tax expert, and he filed his sister's company's tax returns without disclosing the actual earnings. There was like understatement of earnings. He was also stripped of his designation. So the consequences of your decision and the potential consequences have to be evaluated. At the end of the day, this four-step approach, the idea is that the decision you take, you should be comfortable in explaining it and not trying to hide it, right? You should be able to sleep nights and not be worried that, okay, I've participated in something that's wrong. That's the whole idea, right? So hopefully that four-step approach will lead you to a better decision. And I guess one of the other things I didn't mention in the options is that sometimes other people can develop options for you better than you can. So I'm suggesting you should go to your mentors. And this is what happened when this lady approached me, the one who was the CFO of the large company. I actually, on a confidential basis, I went to a CEO in her sector, a CFO in her sector, an audit partner in her sector, so that I gave her a very broad perspective of how they saw her situation, right? So sometimes, we develop options, but someone else can develop more options or think through differently. That's another way to, and I think this is something very, very important in business, in the accounting profession, is people need to have people around them that can guide them in a confidential manner. This is very challenging, right? Even you can imagine a business owner, if they're put in a challenging ethical position, unless they have mentors who they can turn to and say, I have this situation, what should I do? Sometimes it's very challenging to think through and to evaluate, right? So I think having those mentors, having people you can turn to without violating confidentiality, right? If you speak to them in a confidential manner, that would help.
Absolutely. Well explained, Arun. So my last question to you is to, in this change time when employees have lots of companies and lots of options also, they can become an entrepreneur, online business, offline business. So many things are there for them. And a great resignation, all these things have showed that there are options. Amidst all these things, for an employee and their ethics, is it the best of times or is it the worst of times for an employee and his or her ethics?
Oh, it's a very, very challenging time for sure, right? I can tell you, I don't know if I would say it's the best of time, but I have been working almost like 50 years, and I look at where we're at today. There is so much uncertainty, right? We have a global workforce, we have a global environment where people all over the world are working together. We have AI, which threatens to, not only threatens, but is probably replacing many jobs. So like, for example, entry-level programming jobs and entry-level legal jobs, accounting jobs, banking jobs are going to be replaced, are being replaced as we speak. So, for example, I have a granddaughter who's 16, and she came to me, she's in grade 11, thinking about university courses, occupation. I feel really clued out, right? Because so much disruption. How do you guide a young person, right? So I think we're in a period of disruption. We're in a period of automation. Just 2 years ago, I was speaking with the CFO of a global company. He said he reduced his accounting staff from 29 people to 9 people just in 1 year. And that's 2 years ago. That's before ChatGPT came in, right? So there's a huge automation going on in every company, because that's a very quick return on investment, right? So in terms of best of times, the other thing I will say is that the fundamentals don't change, right? The accounting fundamentals, the business fundamentals, the life fundamentals. I read that somebody wrote that teenagers don't listen to their parents anymore and stuff like this. It was written 500 BC, right? Not anywhere close to our lives, but it was going on before Christ was here. So the fundamentals in life don't change, the environment changes, right? So for example, in my field in accounting, the accounting fundamentals don't change. We need very diligent, hardworking, intelligent people to do this work. There's lots of hope in automation. There's lots of hope in ChatGPT, but we hope that someone will understand, will apply their values, will oversee, even if software does the bookkeeping, but the analysis, the decision making, it'll be human beings that will do that, right? So yeah, it'd be hard to, it's the best of times if you own the capital and you harness technology. You're able to reduce your workforce. It's the best of times in terms of the return on investment that a business person could get, because they can I use this in my training company. So my 2 daughters and I work in the training company. It's very interesting. I ask my daughter a question in a Zoom call, like in a meeting. And while I'm talking to her, she goes into ChatGPT and she answers the question. Right? It's like that. So if I'm organizing a curriculum, if I'm organizing a new course, it's very, very powerful. So she says to me, it's like having an assistant that does the work. So I'm asking the question, the assistant answers the question. So you harness this for business, is going to have tremendous, tremendous boost to the bottom line. So that is the good part. As a society, time will tell, right? Time will tell whether, because I look at all these banking jobs, accounting, legal, government, all the places where people work, those jobs will, even in the tech field, the jobs are being cut, right? My son works in a Silicon Valley company, lives in New York. Last year, they cut their workforce in half, right? When they interviewed the CEO, he said, we were working on technology. We thought it was 10 years away, but we already got it. So they're able to harness that technology, cut the workforce in half. Right? So in that way, it's a very exciting time, right? There's tremendous, tremendous gains going on, because that company has, I think he said his company's revenue is 5 times higher, but the workforce is cut in half, right? So that's a reality as well on the ground. So I forgot to mention one thing. Do we have a couple of minutes?
Yeah.
So, I was saying that we should not take ethics as compliance. So to me, there's a return on investment on ethics. I think I forgot to mention that to you. So to me personally, having observed business and seen success and failures and different outcomes, so if you behave ethically, you're avoiding lawsuits, you're avoiding getting into non-compliance. So non-compliance would be like someone auditing, someone giving you a penalty or a fine and all that because you've done something wrong. So that's kind of the first return. The second return on ethics is that your employees will be more engaged. Their heart and soul will be in the company. They'll want to help you. Because when you behave unethically as a leader, it's very difficult for the employees to respect you, right? So if the employees are not engaged, if they don't respect the leadership, number one, they'll leave the company because you don't want to participate in wrongdoing. Number two, you hang around, but you don't really care, right? You don't care about the customers, you don't care about your coworkers, you don't care about the work. So your productivity goes down. So that's the second return on investment. The third thing I've observed, because I've done many different kinds of work, like I used to be in land development and rezoning of land, where you're up against the government, right? Every government department is saying, don't do this, but you're trying to rezone the land to change the land use. So when you behave ethically, the people around you, like your suppliers, your employees, your customers, even your bank and your lenders, they recognize that, right? We recognize when we're dealing with an ethical person, an honest person, or a dishonest person. They will actually help you. So when I did my work with the government, because I behaved ethically, they helped me to succeed because they bring in their knowledge, they bring in their intellect. And some of the projects I've done, I could not have done if I did not get the ideas from them on how to do it. So this trust that you build, the relationship that you have with the ecosystem in which you operate, when you behave ethically, they will help you to succeed, right? So all of these things will actually boost your bottom line because you're not trying to cover your tracks, you're not trying to pay lawyers and go in and out of court. That it really, you're not going to gain from that. It just consumes management time. And I think you also get customer loyalty when you behave ethically because that customer will stick with you. And I can give you hundreds of examples where once you behave ethically, that customer sticks with you for 20, 30 years, right? They're not arguing about pricing. They're not shopping in the marketplace because you establish trust, right? And ultimately, if you consistently behave ethical as a business, any organization, you will have a positive reputation. Nowadays, with the internet, our reputation is analyzed in real time, right? University professors, doctors, restaurants, everybody is getting ranked and evaluated. So if we consistently behave ethically, we will have a positive reputation, right? And then that helps in recruiting new people, that helps in getting new business because you have a positive reputation. So this is my view, right? My view is that ethics is in your benefit, right? It's not compliance related. It's in your benefit if you're taking a long-term view, right? And I've observed this in my life. I've observed this with my clients, right? So this is not compliance related in the sense that you have to do this. It's optional, right? You have to follow the law because the law is enforced, but there's no courts of ethics. There's no ethics police, right? Although it's coming. Did you know that, Ajay? In my view, it's actually coming because when you talk about ESG, environmental, social, and governance, that is like someone looking at your behavior specifically and then, reporting on that. So maybe in the future, we will have that ethics police.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's so much to learn about all this from you, Arun, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to, a lot of companies, good ones and not so good ones also, would want to learn all about and perhaps, be your client. What's the best way for them to do so?
So I'm very active on LinkedIn. We have an Instagram account. I have a bunch of live and on-demand courses. The thing that I would love to do is to speak with people personally in their conferences. So I would love to come to a corporate conference, industry conference, anything like that, and to speak about return on investment on ethics, to speak about ethical decision-making in a crisis, to speak about how to improve governance, these types of topics. We have on-demand and live courses for those who are interested. I travel right across the world, as people call me, excited to see the differences in culture and to see if this will help. Ultimately, this is like we talk about training, we talk about return on investment on training. The more practical the training is, the more you can actually benefit from it. That is what I target towards, right? To actually discuss things that work and not just the theory to say, okay, this is what you should do, but why should you do that and what can you do? So I even talk about like ideas on things like how to evaluate ethics risk, how to improve your workplace, like what are the steps you can do, right? So I would love to talk to people about that and love to hear their views on that as well.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Ajay. Really enjoyed it.